Chris Watkin here, joined by Liana Loporto Brown, who is the president of the National Association of Estate Agents. Liana, thanks for joining me today. What I want to do is find out a little bit about you, the woman behind the brand, why you became an estate agent, and why you basically put your hand up to be the El Presidente, and why you set up your own agency. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today,
Thank you
Chris.
for joining us today. Thank you for coming up to Grantham to be on the WatkinSofa. Okay, so let's go back to when you were a child. Did you always want to be an estate agent?
No, Chris, I wanted to be a ballerina, professional ballerina. And in fact, I went back to the studio after school, 5-hour days training. It was, you know, it's discipline trying to become a ballerina.
Giving it the old arm over and the pointy legs bit. Yeah, do it myself in the mirror and the hands. Yeah. Okay.
So that was my career of choice. But unfortunately, I had an injury and suddenly the world came crashing down.
How old were you when you got this injury?
16, going on 17. I had won a scholarship to come to London and to take the next step. And that just shook my world.
You're Maltese by birth, aren't you?
I'm I come from a tiny little island called Malta, which fits into London many, many times.
Did you actually go to the museum and look at the George Cross that the island won?
Do you know what? I haven't, but I know about our George Cross. We're very proud that we were, given the George Cross. But in fact, if you go to Malta, we absolutely love the Brits.
Oh, bless. Well, we love you guys as well. So your world crashed down in front of you as a teenager, 16.
Yes.
What did you do then? What year do you leave school? At what age do you leave school in Malta?
Around about that age, and then I didn't want to. I wasn't academic. I wanted to work. I wanted to do something. Obviously, I was training to go and be a ballerina, so I had to rethink life. And my mum dragged me. She was an interior designer, so she used to drag me everywhere, and I used to wait for. And as she turned these wrecks into these beautiful properties, including hotels and all of that, and she just made somebody give me a job, and I was in catering, so I'd be up in the morning doing stock, going out and managing a team of people selling food in a canteen.
This is in the hotel industry.
The hotel industry. Then I started a coupon magazine with a partner, which is like what Voucher is today, but it was you could measure your advertising. And then I thought, wow, I sell advertising. Why not do property? And that's 19 years old, started my life in property.
Let's just come back. Running a team of people as an 18-year-old, how did you learn how to manage people and lead people and motivate them?
I was thrown in at the deep end, and I had chefs working for me. They're not the easiest people to have working for an 18-year-old, and I really had to cement my authority. And I suppose the way I did it was by leading by example. I'd be up, I wouldn't be behind my desk just working away and telling them what to do. I'd be there serving the food. I'd be there saying hello to we had university canteen and we had secondary school canteen and the airport canteen. So that was the kind of people and the kind of situation I was in. So I'd just be there, and I suppose that was part of why it worked, and then I worked my way up there.
Where did you get that from? Was that from your parents?
Oh, I think, yes, my father's never taken a day off, Chris, and I don't think that's a good thing now, because I do really appreciate that you have to live your life and enjoy every minute. But both my parents were workers, we were always very hardworking. So that was the reason why, and that's that background of doing ballet, and that's, your toes are bleeding and you're wrapping them up and you're going to dance on them for an extra 2 hours. It's tough.
So you went into property in 97.
Yes.
Again, was that because of your mum?
No, I was selling advertising, and I just thought there was a point where I had a partnership and it didn't work out. I had started my own business then, and property, in the way it works in Malta, it is self-employed, but you work under the brand. It's the largest real estate company in Malta. I started at 19, and you're hanging off balconies, sticking boards, but you do everything. I made tea, and I had a really good boss, and I worked my way up to running a branch in the capital city. And that was my process. And I got into it because it was just, yeah, I could sell advertising. That's hard enough. Why not go and sell property?
What did you love about being an estate agent as a young 20-something?
So I sold one of the most prestigious properties in Malta. This guy walked into my office, Chris. Nobody looked at him. And I got up, and he had a budget of 15,000 Maltese pounds at the time. He ended up buying one of the most prestigious properties, and everybody judged him. They thought, we're not going to get up and speak to this guy. We charge 5% commission in Malta, 3.5% is sole agency. So I bought my car, which was a real estate agency car, like literally down to my 19 alloy wheel in Jallow wheels. Very proud. It had estate agent written all over it. And I put a deposit for my flat. And then I managed to, that set me up. And then I started my first investment. And that was how it all went, because it was a career there. And it was something which you're proud to be.
Where are estate agents in Malta looked up to?
I don't think they're looked down at. I wouldn't say looked up to, but I wouldn't say they're looked down at. It's not the same as...
Is it considered a profession as opposed to an industry?
Definitely, and it's afforded a lot of people a very good life.
Especially at 5% fees.
Yeah. The turnover is smaller, obviously, but the fees are there, and you don't negotiate those fees.
The totem pole of your life, and your mum, you unfortunately lost her battle to cancer in '99. How did that affect you? And again, I've not lost my parents, so I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, it's a long, hard battle. It was a long, hard battle, and anybody that's lost a parent knows that it completely rocks your world. So there were a few years where I was trying to find myself, but I always worked hard, and estate agency gave me that grounding.
Do you think that you threw yourself into estate agency to kind of compensate or
I feel so guilty for not being with her enough because I was working. That was my way of running away, and I think I've probably carried on to do that. Just work really hard.
In hindsight, do you think you could have done things differently?
Oh, hindsight is a
wonderful
fantastic thing, isn't it?
If you were teaching your children, or again, that's probably a bit too close, but if you had your time again, what would you have done differently?
I don't have regrets, Chris, because I think if you do have regrets, you end up spending your life with negative feelings rather than positive feelings. And I am, as I tell people, and because I was told this by Wendy Richards, she's written a book and she suffered abuse all her life. And she told me, Liana, everybody has a superpower. What's yours? And I have thought about it, and I think one of my superpowers is positivity and just waking up in the morning and really looking at the best of every situation rather than the worst. And I think,
Positivity or optimism? Because there's a difference.
What's the difference?
Positivity is positive even if the shit's hitting the fan. Optimism is it's going bad at the moment, but it'll get better.
A mixture of both?
Okay. No. Because sometimes you have to realise that things are bad to appreciate, well, don't worry, they will get better.
Yes.
The optimism of it getting better.
Yes, and then it
Whilst
would be
positivity,
optimism.
You could almost be, the shit is in the fan again. Oh, it's fine. That's the difference.
No. I think if you are feeling down, then you need to just sit with that. Or if something's gone wrong, you need to learn from it and you need to analyse it.
So by the sounds of it, it's probably not positive, it's optimism.
Yeah, well.
There you
go.
You've learned to me every day.
And then I moved to London, Chris.
So this was 2005. Okay, so you've been through some issues with in relationships. You lost your mum. Malta joined the EU in the early 2000s.
Yes.
Did you just think to yourself, well, I was due to go to London to be at ballet school, so sod it, I'm going to go to London?
It was a little bit of that. I had done a lot of travelling because of London. We had been to London because Mum was at the Royal Free here, and there was affinity to her having passed away here. We joined the EU, and I did. I packed my flat up. Took me 3 weeks. Flew up for a few interviews. Knew what I wanted to do.
What did you want?
I wanted to build my life away from the memories, the everyday memories.
Were you running away?
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
I know you don't have regrets, but but you started a new life. What did you want?
At that time, all I wanted was a change of environment and to be successful in what I did. And I knew that I could work, and I didn't have any fears.
What do you class as success?
It's different from then. Then it used to be driving a really nice car. Now it's making my children happy and offering them the best life they can have.
Okay.
Very different age,
Okay.
view on success with age.
So who did you join when you came to London?
So I got a couple of job offers, and then I joined Foxtons.
Wow.
And I thought so imagine how hard it was from being well-regarded agent in Malta, at the top of my game, then come here, and there was the week of the program. And the brick got thrown through my car window. So this was, and I was just like, why? Why do agents have such a bad name? I just couldn't get my head around it.
So you were the big swinging what's name in Malta. You came to as a branch manager. I'm assuming they didn't give you a branch manager's job straight away.
No, I started from the very bottom. In fact, I left Chiswick in a branded Mini, drove to Shepherd's Bush, stopped and cried. I did. I was, what am I doing? Put my TomTom and I hadn't driven on the motorway, Chris, at that time.
So you joined Foxtons. You were basically on the bottom rung of the ladder. Did you realise that the estate agents weren't thought of particularly well at that time, or did you think everyone would?
So there's a pivotal moment in everybody's life, and that brick led me to Propertymark, which we can all talk about later. But that was my catalyst to say, I want to change. I want to do something to change this perception. It's been so good to me. Estate agency has been so good to me. I love it so much because there were a couple of things in Malta which happened. That one, selling one of the most prestigious property, which really did set me up for life. And also I negotiated a sale with 64 vendors. Having got through that, I stopped and I said, I would always be an estate agent because I loved the challenges. I loved some people can't deal with the roller coaster. I enjoyed it. So I just thought I have to do something to change the perception of agents in this country. Why is it so bad?
Come back to this brick in the car. Did it frighten you?
Yeah, I suppose it was a little bit a shock.
So you've been working for the firm for a week. They gave you a car. And was it just parked up outside a house or your home? And
yeah, because if you don't remember, the whistleblower was in St. John's Wood, and that was my office, so she was in my office.
So
there was nothing, no. Luckily, I was running around just following everyone. But anyway, it was, it was a pretty hard time.
But this brick, were you on your own at this point?
Yes.
So it must have frightened you that someone's prepared to put a brick through your door, up through the window of your car.
I don't think I gave it. I don't think I just let it frighten me. I just thought
Did it spur you on?
It spurred me on.
Obviously for Propertymark, but
to try and understand why. It was also really hard to walk into a room of people and say you're an estate agent that works for Foxtons. But Foxtons, where I had an incredible time there.
So you came in as neg, senior neg.
Rare. Went up to rare, and then I wasn't progressing quickly enough, and that's when the opportunity to become a sales manager came about.
We'll come back to that in a second, but you're at Foxtons for 3 years. You met your husband there, didn't you?
We did, on an incentive trip where we met in Iceland in the Blue Lagoon.
And you still with your husband, with your children?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Was meant to be a year, then turned into a much longer stint in London, and he's a proper Londoner, and he's been with Foxtons for 15 years.
I must admit, I met my wife through a state agency as well, bless her.
So many Foxtons couples.
Good firm, if you don't mind me saying. Good firm. And let's be honest, I think a beacon to some agents in the way that they operate, especially their database and how they use data. Okay, but let's not talk about, this is not about Foxtons, this is about you.
It
2000.
accelerated everything for me, though. Foxtons accelerated my learning of the London market. I don't think I would have progressed to where I was if I hadn't joined Foxtons and had gone with another agency that offered a job.
Okay. Do you think in hindsight, you went to work for London Residential as their sales manager and ultimately then their sales director. In some times, do you think you could have stopped with Foxtons, or were you just being impatient?
I was probably being impatient, and in hindsight, I didn't go straight to the top and demand to become the valuer. And in a way, I should have taken it as a compliment that they wanted me to stay in Rare, because in Rare you make good money. But at that time, I was impatient. I wanted to progress, and I wanted to become a valuer. I love valuing property.
Do you think there's a lesson learned for the young negs out there that in hindsight, and again, don't get me wrong, you had a great career at London Residential, but you could have taken your career in a different direction if you just held back at...
Absolutely. I
know
mean,
you don't do regret, but just, let's give some value out there for the boys and girls out there in the estate agency.
But then on the flip side of that, I wouldn't have joined what London Residential was a startup at the time, and the successes I had there at the beginning, and just learning how to do everything. Because from a neg, I was a sales manager, and I didn't have, you don't become a sales manager overnight.
No, you don't.
But I was, and I had been a manager before, but in a very different environment. In Malta, it is self-employed, so you, as much as you have a team of people, they don't directly depend on you as they had here.
Now, you started your own agency in 2020.
Yes,
I mean, if you don't mind me saying, I thought you'd have been at London Resi for the rest of your life.
So did I. I think, like many
Good operation.
others.
Stephen, I think it's fantastic.
Yes, Stephen's great. We had a lot of fun. He's built an incredible business, especially on the letting side.
Do you think this comes, that there was an itch coming back to when you were in Malta that hadn't been itched?
No, I think it was a lockdown epiphany like many others. And I think I sat there and I had spoken to them. I needed to see growth in the next 10 years. I'm 44. I wanted to say, where am I going to be at 54? And I couldn't see how my position would change within the business. And that's what spurred me.
He wasn't going to sell you the business, was he? Because, he's similar age. So can you remember the time when you said, shit, I need to do this for myself?
Yes, I remember the exact moment.
Go on.
And that was in lockdown. And there was a moment where I thought, right, things aren't going to change. I need to do this.
What fears did you have? I mean, there's obviously the money, the perception of you as a person.
That didn't worry me. It was the kids. It was because we have 2 children and we want to give them the best education. And it was mainly, luckily I was, I suppose, astute enough to buy a couple of buy-to-lets and become a landlord and try and build up a good backing wherever my position was financially. But yes, not being able to pay our bills at the end of the month, which is scary.
What did your husband say when you said, I want to become my own estate agent?
Go for it. He's so supportive of everything I do. I don't think he'd question it if he knows that I am really not obsessed. What's the word? Focused. Determined. That's the word about it.
Do you think you could have done it without his support?
Yes, but I wouldn't. I don't think you'd want to. It's just nice to be a good team. We're a really good team.
Is he as driven as you are?
Yes.
But often 2 driven people in the same household can be a recipe for disaster. But obviously it isn't, because you've been married for over 10 years. You've got kids, and you're happily married. What's the secret there then? To have 2 driven people, because normally it's the old opposites attract bit, isn't it?
I think he puts up with me, and we do compromise. And there are some things which are really important that you need to know to him, and some things which are really important to me. And I think it's just recognizing those and knowing the things that You need to sometimes step back and allow that person to lead the way, and the rest of the things where I need to lead the way.
But not only did you start your own estate agency, I believe you'd been a regional rep, hadn't you, for National Association of Estate Agents, and then you went to put your hand up just at the same time as when you started your own agency. That seems very foolish, if you don't mind me saying, starting your own agency and then becoming an ambassador for Propertymark.
My journey with Propertymark, when that brick was thrown to my window, and then I started to look at Propertymark, I started to follow them. I eventually became a member and really wanted to champion everything that they were about, the professionalism, the qualification. I started my qualifications. And I think, yes, they both came together, but sometimes life does that to you. And there was the opportunity to have it, and I thought it was such a great position to go for.
How do you, and again, I must stress to you, and Ellie Reese will shoot me for this, okay? And no, I wouldn't ask this question of a man. And I know we're going to do a separate video about women in estate agency. But the simple fact of life is that the emotional weight of running a family is often put on the shoulders of the woman in the relationship. I don't care what you say, that is life, isn't it? How can you spin the plates of being a wife and a mother and El Presidente and your own estate agents and still make sure nothing drops?
It's being really organized, and it's asking for support when you need it. And that's why Claire and I started the Women in Estate Agency group, because at the time, and going through, even with London Residential, having children and not having a role model I could reach out to and ask, how did you do this? What do you do? Finding ways we're so hard on ourselves as women. And I think just finding ways to be able to do everything. But who knows if we're doing everything well? Regardless if you're stacking shelves at Tesco or the president of the NAEA, as a woman, you're always going to have your doubts on how you're performing as a mother and as a person.
How do you deal with it? I mean, you said, delegation and things like that, but, you know how demanding husbands can be and how not shallow, but, I say my wife's relationship is that if 5 out of 10 is a perfect worrying about things, I'm at 2 and she's at 8. And it's the gap between the two that's the issue. Is your husband a typical man where basically, oh man, Liana, we'll sort it all out tomorrow? I was talking to the wonderful Abigail Gray, and she was telling me, the fact that she's working days and weeks in advance while her husband's literally working minutes in advance. How do you sort that out?
Well, it's hard to sort out. I think you just become, as I said, you just become really organized, and you just delegate where you have to, and you just know that there are some things that will work for you and some that won't. Having an au pair, for me, even I used to feel guilty about leaving my kids or having someone else look after or bring my kids up. Whereas now I know that she's their sister, she's part of our family. And it's just been fantastic because I can step out when I need to, I can close my office, and I know that my kids are having fun, they're looked after.
How old are your kids?
5 and 9.
Wow.
It's not easy.
And there's a decent gap there as well, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. I wanted one off at school before having the other one. I think about these things. I try to make my life fit around it. And even with work, if you have that gap, then you're able to have one off at school and then, have some time to rebuild your career a bit. Because it's difficult. You do lose out, and you're not able to work as you did before, but you can work differently, which is a really great thing to discover.
And how is your own estate agency going?
Brilliantly.
Okay. What do you put that down to?
I think there's a real need for personal service within our industry. I think that the timing of this model, what EXP allows you to do, which is build your own brand, do your own thing for people that have experience and have been in the industry for a long time. I just think there's a real need for it at the moment, and consumers, clients they want experience, they want good advice, and they want somebody who really cares, and that they want that personal service. They don't want to be passed on anymore, and have doors left over, have alarms set off, and I think that's probably why it's working so well.
Do you love it?
I love it.
Good.
It's brilliant. I mean, it offers me everything, and I'm able to service my clients just as I want. And for me, it's not about the figures on the wall anymore. It's not about going to sit at board meetings to see how we're going to hit the next, million mark. It's just about the journey, offering my client a fantastic journey, giving really good advice. And once you change your focus to service, the rest follows.
What, the money follows? And
the money follows, or it has. I've been fortunate enough that it has. And I think the setup and the market I'm in, I'm selling houses between 1 and 2 million, which is, usually young families with kids who I relate to. I understand their journey. I understand the money they've spent on their house. I know that all the hidden costs that you're able to pass on those viewings, it's just very different to somebody that possibly hasn't done a renovation and can't pass that on. And I think, clients see that.
Well, I wish you well on your presidency, which finishes in the summer of 22?
Yes, June 2022.
So I wish you well at the conferences and wish you well with your business. And what I'd like to do is now just do some separate quick fire videos on various different topics like women in estate agency, self-employed estate agency, ROPA, regulation, that sort of thing. And we'll do those next if that's okay. So
Brilliant.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Chris.